So here's a lesson about how do we solve radical equations whenever they're present on both sides, whenever the variable is on both sides. Now the main idea here is that we will be using exponents to eliminate radicals, so keep that in mind. Now let's do some examples here. Now here we want to solve. Basically, we want to leave x by itself, but notice that x is located inside the square root and outside the square root, so it's present on both sides. Now what do we do with these instances? We use the same idea that was in the we use the same idea that we did in the previous video, which is you still want to get that x alone. So in somehow you need to eliminate that square root, and the only way that we know is in order for us to eliminate that square root, we need to take the square to both sides, and keep that in mind that whatever you do in one side, you gotta do it to the other. So let's do that. We raise the second exponent to the left, second exponent to the right. Now, once we have it here, square roots cancel out. So now we have 2x plus 8 is equal to, now we have x squared. Now, our objective is to solve this, is to solve our new equation. Now, if you want to solve, your equation should be equal to 0. So let's do that. Let's set it equal to 0 first, minus 8 to both sides. So now we have 2x equals x squared minus 8. You want to leave the equation equal to 0. So we do that. So now we have that x squared minus 2x minus 8 is equal to 0. Good. So now we have here, now we want to solve this equation. Now we went from a radical to just a regular equation, second degree equation. Now there's different ways to solve this. We're going to use factoring. So let's factor this out. So two numbers that if I multiply gets me negative 8, and if I add them up gets me negative 2. Well, it's pretty straightforward. I know that 4 and 2 gets me 8. Let's make this negative 4, because negative 4 times 2, that's negative 8. Negative 4 plus 2, that's negative 2. So we have, now, we have to, if we rewrite this in factor form, that's going to be x minus 4 and x plus 2, and that is equal to 0. So now, again, from our previous video, when it's in factor form, you set each of those factors equal to 0, and then you solve it individually. So plus 4. So now you know that one of your equations is when x is equal to 4, and your second equation is when x is equal to negative 2. Now, one thing that is pretty important here is that when you have solutions, yes, now we have to check. We have to check our solutions now. So it's a little bit annoying, but you need to make sure that you have solutions, because now when you have variables on both sides, you will see that we might obtain something called extraneous solutions. Now, let's see, how do we check it? We plug it into the original. Now let me erase this so you know what's the original function here. So now we have, how do we check it? We're just going to plug into the original. So let's check when x is equal to 4. Is that a solution? Well, let's just check. So we're going to have square root of 2. Now we're going to check 4, so times 4 plus 8. Is that equal to 4? No, let me just write it as 4. All right, so what I do, I got my variable, I plug into the original equation, and I want to make sure that this is true. So let's see. Square root, 2 times 4, that's 8. 8 plus 8, that's 16. So we have the square root of 16. Is that equal 4? The square root of 16, we know it to be 4. So 4 equals 4, so that is good. So x equals to 4 is one of my solutions. So it is a solution because it makes sense. Now, let's check what happens when x equals to negative 2. So now I'm going to have, what happens when x equals to negative 2? I don't know. Let's check. So again, we're going to plug into our original. We're going to have square root of 2. But now this time we're going to check for negative 2. so negative 2, plus 8, that is equal to negative 2, according to our check. Well, let's see. Now, let's multiply this. So now we have the square root. 2 times negative 2, this is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 8, so this is positive 4, equals negative 2. Now, square root of 4, that's 2. Now here, we're saying that 2 is equal to negative 2, which is not true. This is not true, so that means that this is not a solution. It is not a solution. So now, in our final answer, I'm going to write it here. So my final answer is that my only solution is when x is equal to 4. Because notice that when we check negative 2, if we plug it in, your final answer didn't match. 2 is not equal to negative 2. So that means that this is not a solution. We got two solutions. One of them is not a solution. So that means that x equals to 4 is our only solution. So it's pretty important for you to check, as you see here. Now, let's do another example. Is it the same problem? No. Okay, so let's do it right here. Now, again, if you have a square root, you need to eliminate that square root. The first thing you want to do is to eliminate that square root. How do we eliminate square root? That is by using our exponents. So there's an imaginary 2 here. You got to remember that. If there's an imaginary 2 there, so we got to take to the second exponent both sides, because that way they will cancel out, and now we'll have that x plus 2 is equal to x squared. Again, we want to solve this. You got to set your equation equal to 0. So let's set our equation equal to 0. So now we have x equals to x squared. Well, that makes an error. It might be confusing. Minus 2. So minus x. So minus x. Minus x. Oops, what happened here? What do we have here? 2. I'm sorry about that. So now they cancel out. So now you have that x squared minus x minus 2 is equal to 0. All right, so we have this. We want to solve this. One way to solve it is by using factoring. So let's use factoring over here. So we use our factor. Now, two numbers that if you multiply gives you negative 2. And if you add them up, gives you negative 1. So how about 2 and 1? I know that 2 and 1 gives me negative 2. I want one of them to be negative. Let's make this negative 2. So let's check. Negative 2 times 1, it is negative 2. Negative 2 plus 1, it is negative 1. So we're good here. Now let's continue our problem here. So our trinomial, we can rewrite it as x minus 2 and x plus 2 equal to 0. Now they have in factor form. Now we solve. So we have that x minus 2 is equal to 0 and x plus 1 is equal to 0. All right. So what do we do now? You solve the left. You see that one of your solutions is 2. Now you solve your right. So your second solution, oops, minus 1, not 2. It's minus 1. All right, so you got two solutions, which is okay. Now, we got to check now. So this is the word checking process now. So let's check. Now, let's check one solution at a time. Let's check when x is equal to 2. Let's check what happens when x equals to 2. When x equals to 2, let's plug it into our solution here. So we're going to have the square root of 2 plus 2 is that equals to 2. All right, so it's going to be straightforward. 2 plus 2, that's 4. So now we're saying the square root of 4 equals to 2. The square root of 4, that's 2. So that says that 2 is equal to 2. So that means that x equals to 2, it is a solution. Now let's check when x equals to negative 1. Let's check this now. So we're going to have, let me separate this. So now we're going to have the square root of -1 plus 2. Is that equal to -1? Well, let's check. So now we're going to have -1 plus 2. So now we're saying that the square root of 1 is equal to -1. The square root of 1 is 1. So does 1 equal -1? No, they do not equal. This is not a solution. So let's write our conclusion here. Now our conclusion is that we have only one solution. So solution, and our only solution, that's when x is equal to 2. So let's write that here. X equals to 2. So this is my conclusion. We have only one solution, which is 2, because when we check -1, it didn't match, it didn't make sense. 1 is not equal to -1. So after our checking process, we see that the only solution here is positive 2. Now let's look into a more challenging question here. Example 3. It might look a little bit intimidating, but it follows the same process. If you see a square root, what do? Well, you gotta eliminate that square root somehow. So how do we eliminate it? We take the square to both sides. Good. So now, notice I'm taking the square because there's an imaginary 2 here. So the root has to match the exponent. So that's why it comes out. So now we have that x equals to 5. That is equal to x minus 1 square. But what is x minus 1 square? X minus 1 square, that is equal to x minus 1 times x minus 1. So we gotta find this product, which is just basically basic foiling. So you FOIL. So let's see, what do we have here? So x times x, that's x squared. X times -1, so that's -x. And then we're gonna do our FOIL again, but now we're gonna distribute that -1. So -1 times x, that is equal to -x. And -1 times -1, that is equal to +1. Okay. So let's simplify this. X squared minus 2x plus 1. All right. So now we have that x minus 1 to the second, which we did the work here on the side. X minus 1 to the second is equal to x squared minus 2x. So the right side, it's equal to this. So we have x squared minus 2x plus 1. Good. Again, if you want to solve this, you got to set it equal to 0. So let's subtract some numbers here. Set it equal to 0. So minus 5 here, minus 5 here. I like to do it one step at a time because it might create some confusion. So x is equal to x squared minus 2x. What is that? Minus 4. Again, I want to set it equal to 0, so I need to eliminate that x. So now we have x squared minus 2x minus x, so that's negative 3x. Bring down that minus 4. That is equal to 0. Excellent. So we have this now. How do we solve it? Trinomial, highest exponent is 2, leading coefficient is 1. So we can do some factoring here. Number that goes on top, negative 4. Number that goes on bottom, negative 3. Let's see. Two numbers that if I multiply gives me negative 4. Add them up, gives me negative 3. So 4, 1. And I gotta make this into a negative. So now let's just check it verbally here. Negative 4 times 1, it is negative 4. Negative 4 plus 1, it is negative 3. All right, so let's continue our problem here. So now we're going to have the factor form, which is x minus 4 and x plus 1 equals 0. All I did, I rewrote this expression into factor form using the factors that I found using the x method. So now we solve here. Two factors, they equal to 0. Set each factor equal to 0. All right, so let's solve this real quick. We have Add 4 on both sides. So you see that x is equal to 4 minus 1 on both sides. So you see that x equals to minus 1. Let's not get lazy here. Let me rewrite this. So x equal to 4. All right, excellent, excellent business. Now we have two solutions. Again, what you have to do now is we got to check. We got to check. So let's check our solution here. So let's check this. Now, so let's check. So let's see. What happens when x... Let's check our first solution. What happens when x is equal to 4? So let's check this. So let me bring down the equation that we're checking. So again, this is the solution, or this is the equation that we're checking. I want to check that, so let me erase this. Okay, remember this is the solution that we're checking on, which is the original. We got to check that original. So let's see. How do we check it? We just plug it in. So let's make this quick. Square root, I see an x, we're checking for 4. So now we're going to have 4 plus 5 equals 4 minus 1. Well, let's check if this statement is true, you know? So now we're going to have 4 plus 5, that's 9. 4 minus 3, 4 minus 1, that is 3. Okay, there's a 9. Square root 9, so 3 equals 3. Perfect. So x being equals to 4, it is a solution, so we're good. So now let's check when x was our other solution, which is negative 1. Let's check when x equals to negative 1. Well, let's get our problem here. So now we're going to have the square root. Oops, it's an ugly square root right there. What are we going to have? We're negative 1 plus 5 minus negative 1 minus 1. Notice that all I did, or all we're doing here, is that we're checking values. We're going to plug it in back to our original equation. All right, so let's see. Negative 1 plus 5, this is 4. Negative 1 minus 1, that is equal to negative 2. Square root of 4, that's 2. 2 equals to negative 2. This is not true, so this is not a solution. So after all this work, let's write down our conclusion. Conclusion. Okay. Okay, so our conclusion is that we only have one solution. And that solution is when x is equals to 4. All right. So here's your entrance ticket.